Alright, welcome to the Bruce channel. I'm Bruce and glad that you're with us. Actually, more than glad, honored is an appropriate description, because if you're here, you have elected to spend these next 15, 16 minutes or so with us. And wait a minute, what's that currency? 15 minutes, 16 minutes of your life. You don't get those back. So I am honored. There is no higher compliment, and I thank you. Alright, we're not doing football today, but one viewer did write to say, yeah, your pick, New England, won the Super Bowl, but shouldn't have. And it is true, as long as football is spoken of, that decision to pass instead of run will be part of the discussion. On the other hand, the miraculous catch that got Seattle so close shouldn't have happened either. Anyway, going way back to the beginning, I'm not prescient, and I don't follow football as closely as I once did. I don't play fantasy football, because to do that, it's just a game, and it requires far more time than I think it deserves. So, more than anything, my pick was a feeling. Alright, once a week doesn't lend itself much to weather commentary, and I haven't talked about it often, but Boston is really in the gun sight this winter, at least recently. They can handle a 2-foot snowfall now and again, but it seems like they're getting a 2-foot snowfall every week, actually a little bit more frequently now than every week. Roofs have been collapsing from being under 5 and 6 feet of snow, and they are literally running out of places to put it, and it's just February. Yes, it's February, it's winter, but it is more toward the extreme than average, at least there. Now here, last week we hit 72 degrees. Yes, I'm in North Carolina. Yes, that's an old Confederate state, and yes, it's the South. It's not the deep South. 72 is just about unheard of for February. Now, just a few weeks ago, on this show, I'd said it got down to below 10 degrees. And elsewhere, I'd pointed out that my winter jasmine, which typically begins blooming around Christmas, wasn't going to fare so well with temps in the single digits. It did recover pretty well. This picture is from 3 days ago. But, 72 last week. Today, we started at around 10. And we're not expecting to rise above freezing. All right, the last week and a half has been a very bad one for notable obituaries. On Tuesday, February the 3rd, 92-year-old Charlie Sifford died. He was a professional golfer who won 22 tournaments. He might have won more, but he was a black man, and there were many tournaments from which he was excluded. But he was the groundbreaker. He was later followed by the likes of Calvin Peete, and yes, Tiger Woods. Just 4 days later, 83-year-old Billy Casper died on the 7th, and he was one of golf's greats. He really was. He isn't as well remembered as he should be, because partly in his prime years he was often overshadowed by the big three, Arnie, Jack, and Gary. But he was great, 51 PGA victories, including the Masters, and twice the US Open. Okay, then it wasn't announced until Sunday, but also leaving us on Saturday, the 7th, was Dean Smith, the legendary basketball coach for the University of North Carolina. He was a giant. He was beloved here, even by his arch rivals up and down Tobacco Road, the rivals consisting of Wake Forest and Duke and NC State. He was respected and in many cases loved. He was truly a basketball genius. He invented things like the four-corner offense. And today, any basketball game, you see a guy make a shot and then he points to the guy who passed it to him. Dean Smith invented that. Not only was he a basketball genius, he had a perfect basketball pedigree. He was from Kansas. The first college basketball program was at the University of Kansas, the Jayhawks. Who founded that program? The inventor of basketball, James Naismith, who was their first coach. One of the players he coached was Phog Allen, who later became the coach. One of his players, Dean Smith, a direct pipeline to the inventor of the game. This was the front page of the Greensboro News and Record Monday morning. Not the front sports page, the front page. Two stories. Sometime in the summer of 1984, as he was about to play golf, Coach Smith mentioned to the others how much he was really looking forward to playing, how much more so than usual. Asked why, he said, it's the first time in a long time he could play without feeling a little bit guilty. because the day before, maybe a couple days before, he'd finally answered the last of the congratulatory messages he'd received from all over the world, thousands of them, letters, telegrams, whatever, messages congratulating him for the championship won 2 years before in 1982. It took him over 2 years, and I'm certain most were from people he did not know. But he personally answered them all. Story number 2. Some years ago, while covering sports, I was talking with John Harder, who at the time was head coach of a local high school hoops team, the Eden Moorhead Panthers. And he guided them to 2 consecutive state championships. Great teams, he's a great coach. Now, he told me that some good number of years previously, he and many other coaches from around the state, and probably out of state too, attended a clinic, a coaching clinic. I guess it would be the clinician. The clinician was Dean Smith. Now, Dean Smith was already a legend. He turned UNC into a hoops national power. And as I mentioned, he invented things still done today. Obviously, anyone on a national stage like that meets hundreds of thousands of people every year. Coach Smith met Coach Harder. I'm sure Coach Smith met all the coaches at the clinic, and this wasn't his first clinic or his only clinic. Now, years later, and I don't recall how many years later, but years later, and more than just a few, they met again. Despite the intervening years, and despite the initial meeting maybe not lasting more than 60 seconds, Dean Smith immediately said something like, "John Harder, it's great to see you again." His brain was a steel trap, which only made it harder, I suppose, for both him and his family, since without naming a specific disease, the family did allow, some years ago, that Coach Smith was suffering from a form of dementia, that is, losing his memories. What everyone around here has said over and over and over, he was a great coach, but he was a greater man. Then a few days later, on Wednesday, we got word that another college basketball Hall of Fame coach had died, 84-year-old Jerry Tarkanian. His UNLV Runnin' Rebels won the national championship in 1990 against Duke and lost to them in a rematch the following year. Then, late Wednesday night, came word that Bob Simon, longtime CBS newsman and one of the hosts of 60 Minutes, was killed in a traffic accident in Manhattan. The irony is he'd been a war correspondent and in fact was captured during the first Gulf War in 1991. But he died in an accident at home. So the message is clear. Live in the present, not the future, because there is no assurance there is future. Hey, let me tell you about my book, Shrink. For most of my adult life, I weighed a little over 100 pounds, not much more than in this picture taken when I was about 17 and considering becoming a jockey. But as is often true, once I crossed into my 40s, extra weight came and it stayed. For years I tried to lose, instead gained, and ended up 153 pounds. And I'm embarrassed to show you this video. Then I learned that it isn't about calories and exercise, but instead it's about what you eat. You might say, sure, ice cream makes you fat. But there were surprises, things like orange juice not being such a wise choice if you're trying to lose weight. So I just made some basic changes to what I ate, not how much, and the weight just fell off. Now, nearly 3 years later, it is still off. And don't misunderstand, I'm eating foods I like, not bamboo shoots. Friends ask me how I did it so often, I put it in a book. It's available as an ebook for all platforms, and the print edition is available at barnesandnoble.com and amazon.com. Hey, you can shrink too. Welcome back. Remember, you can send us comments and suggestions to us. They're always welcome. Send them to the Bruce Channel at yahoo.com. Previous shows can be found at tinyurl.com/Bruce Channel. And if you're watching through Facebook, be sure to like and share and tell your friends. Okay. As I've mentioned a number of times over the last couple of months, for me, a very big event in 2014 was my participation in making the movie Samka. It was last Saturday night. And I must admit, you open a DVD box, you look at it, you find yourself in it, and it is a heady feeling, to be sure. Well, today, and maybe over the next couple of weeks, I'll reveal some things and take a look at some things from behind the camera. What I won't do is reveal the story because, well, so far it is entered in film festivals in Winston-Salem, and that's just down the road from me, but also Columbia, South Carolina, and that's not so far either. However, Nashville, Boston, Nantucket, not the same, Toronto, Palm Springs, California, Las Vegas, Memphis, Long Island, and Edinburgh. Yeah, the one in Scotland. And there are plans to enter it into maybe a dozen more just within the next couple of months. So, as the dates approach, I will remind you here. So if you are near one, you can attend. Or alert your friends who may be near. So, I can show you more than I could previously, but I still can't show you things that would reveal the story. If you read, say, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, and later saw the movie, you might very well enjoy the movie. But the movie wouldn't have the same impact as if you hadn't read the book, and thus knew the ending. So, we, like I matter, the producers prefer the attendees and judges to not know what's coming. So I can tell you this and I can show you that. I can provide some flavor, but I will excise certain things. All right, so the movie is set in the Dark Ages. There are elements of love and jealousy and betrayal and mystery. All the classic elements you need for a good, rousing tale. And surrounding all of it, the supernatural. All right, so here are some cast shots. Our leading lady, Keterin, played by Brittany Ellis. Her husband, Alexandru, is played by Jeremy Tassoni. Alexandru's brother is Gavril, played by Alan Andrews. And those are the leads. Both Sandra Bradford and I have supporting roles. My role is that of the village elder, here seen with my real-life girl, Katie. As I've said, it took way cool makeup artistry to achieve elder status. And so my hat is off to both Angela Martina Schiffman and Lacey Wells Alexander. Now, at the beginning of the film, it's actually a prologue 30 years earlier. I'm 30 years younger. So, here in these shots, I am being turned into a Studley village not-so-elder. Now, in that first not-so-elder scene, I'm speaking to a group of children gathered around a campfire, warning them that sometimes there can be things to be wary of. Essentially, it's a 1.5-minute soliloquy, and it sets a backdrop for the things that happen 30 years hence.
An ancient crone with long bony fingers and long piercing claws. Her teeth are rotten, but very sharp. Her eyes are red as is blood. Her tongue is on fire. And her face is that of a woman 500 years dead.
All right, we'll skip ahead a few seconds here. Just a few lines, I think, best removed to protect some of the mystery.
So, if your mother is with child, if you feel a chill on a warm summer's night, if you see a shadow, but there is no light about, then listen.
Okay, some makeup magic, and we're suddenly 30 years into the future, where one of the kids around the campfire is now grown and has become the village leader. He and I have some dialogue, not all of it warm and chummy.
The village is frightened. Our people leave us. They come to me in the dark of night and ask my blessing for their journeys. Or they simply slip away, never again to be seen. There is a darkness here. We've done all that can be done. We've sung the chants, danced the dances, performed the rituals. You have led us for many years, and we have prospered. But there is talk of you having lost your way. I I look upon a familiar face, but I know not this man who stands before me. Your eyes are as pale as yours.
So I have a few scenes later, but even though they're brief, they might be too revelatory, so I'm not going to show you that. I do hope, though, we've at least piqued your interest. And as I said, I'll keep you posted vis-a-vis festival dates and places. Next week, I may show you some outtakes. Of course, there are some. Some of them are pretty funny. And maybe some behind-the-scenes interviews. But for this week, that is it. For the week upcoming, I hope it's the best one you've ever had.